Hello you beautiful seekers, and welcome to the Space and Time. My name is Gabriel Lugo and I talk from self to self. Today I have a channeling that was done not so long ago. This is from 2019 on December, and it's of course of our friends Quo, and it's a mixed channeling with information about different things, but there are a couple of them that I want to read and further emphasize the information that is given to us here, and it has to do with communication, mainly meditation or communication through meditation, channeling as well, and there's death. There's even a question about eating meat, which I will probably record for another time because I think it's interesting, especially now with the advent of veganism and vegetarianism and all the different diet approaches that people undertake after having a spiritual awakening. So I think this is a very real phenomenon, and it requires a little bit of an insight from our friends of the Confederation, and of course my own interpretation. So today I am just going to read the parts that are related to communication and possibly even to death. We'll see. If not, we'll leave it for the next episode so as to not extend too much ourselves today. But I will begin with the channeling. Remember, you can access all of this in LNL Research. I leave a link to these channelings in the description in YouTube. If you're listening on another platform, then you would have to go to YouTube. So let's start with Quo's introduction, which I think is always so refreshing to hear from them, the way they initiate communication, asking us always to pay attention and discern the information that resonates with us. So this is Jim channeling in 2019, December 28. Quo says, "I am Quo, and I am with this instrument at this time. We greet each of you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator, of whom we are all a portion, and which we seek with every fiber of our being. We are aware that many in this circle are of the same nature and have the same desire to seek the one, and yet find difficulties in doing. Thus, we come to offer ourselves in the resolving of such difficulties, if possible, and yet in such a manner of speaking, we ask you to realize that we are not ultimate sources of information. We have our own distortions with which to deal in a joyful manner, realizing that the resolution of each distortion moves us closer and closer to the one within us all. So we would ask, as always, that you take those words and thoughts that we offer you and use them in whatever way benefits you the most. If any do not benefit you, then please discard them with no second thought. In this way, we are, as always, able to speak more freely to your queries. May we ask at this time if there is a query with which we may begin." I love this, and I wanted to include it here because every time I speak, it is implicit that, of course, you should always have your own discernment and use my speech. Speaking of discussion today, and communication, whatever I say, with a grain of salt and try to digest it yourself. So, Austin has the first question and says, "I've got one, Quo. Ra had a theory that our logos design our evolution based on speech rather than telepathy in order to increase the veil in some way. I was wondering, if this is true, how that works. Why would relying on speech help to accentuate the veil? And if there is any advice that you would give us in using this to our advantage in polarizing and opening our hearts?" This is a really good question, actually, And I can already think of many reasons why speech, as opposed to telepathy, will increase the veil, and how that actually accentuates our seeking and positively polarizing as well, as we breach the illusion of separation. But let's see what Quo says, and I'll build upon them. Quo says, I am Quo, and am aware of your query, my brother. We find that this is most salient query in the process of seeking within the third density illusion. For the process of reverting to or depending upon speech instead of telepathy or concept communication is a means by which the veil of forgetting is strengthened. The speech that you so joyfully and occasionally carelessly utilize in your third density experience is a means by which the seeming illusory separation between you and all of the creation, and especially the one infinite creator, is enhanced. Concept communication is a means by which it is much easier for entities who are able to communicate in this manner to realize the nature of the illusion, so that the concepts, which are telepathy and precognition and so forth, then reinforce the nature of the creation as being one thing. For the concepts partake of the unity of creation in that they reflect some portion of the functioning of unity, the interaction of communication without the division of thoughts into pieces and particles called words. So my first pause here to comment on it. It's quite obvious for me that if you're using something like telepathy, then it is more present to us that there is a sense of unity between us. You see, whereas speech creates a further division into our ways of communicating. And even in the most simple, I would say the most primitive language, which I believe is even more in tune with reality, as opposed to this sophisticated language that we have developed over time, even there you can see that there is a natural separation or division of interpretation of the words. We're using, as the Confederation says, sound vibrations to communicate things that are from the heart. So, of course, the biggest word that we have, being love, is impossible to define. It's impossible for somebody to read and analyze and understand love from simple concepts or definitions. And this is why artificial intelligence will never understand this, because it doesn't have a heart, it doesn't have a system of feeling, and it's disconnected from the network of emotions that connects all of us. So there is to show a lot of that in our present mentality as we seek the ultimate intelligence in artificial stuff, as opposed to the ultimate intelligence being in the heart, in the emotion or the feeling of love. So you can see how this necessity for communication through speech and words create a further separation that can be enhanced over time, like we have done with the sophisticated language, to rely on abstraction of thought, which is words. So as opposed to us communicating in a less wordy manner, in which the sages have always said that the best way to communicate something is through silence. And this is very much so. I encourage you to actually include more silence in your day, even when talking to people, to listen to them and to allow them to listen to themselves as they speak, and you will see how your silence actually helps them even more, because it elicits that need for them to process within themselves that which they had just said. So yeah, you can see already that this is the greatest thing for strengthening the veil is to increase separation. What is the veil? The veil is simply that which separates us from unity. And in third density, the perception of the veil is stronger. Now, with the application of speech, then we have a thicker veil, because instead of us coming together and relating each other as emotional beings, we relate each other with abstraction of thought, with words, with names and titles and so on. So it's much more difficult. This is why hugging somebody it's worth, I don't know how many words, probably more than words. Just feeling somebody and showing that appreciation, that love, you see. So they have a couple of more paragraphs on this, and they say, thus, as you are able to realize that the words you speak carry power of description that is lesser than concepts convey, then you realize you must work even more persistently to be able to make yourself clear, to clearly transmit the thoughts from your heart, from your mind, and from your very being. As you realize that you are, of necessity, relegated to the use of words, then perhaps you will also add to your attempt at communication a certain fervor that seeks to reveal most clearly what you are thinking and feeling. When this is done in conjunction or in tandem with another entity with whom you are attempting to resolve difficulties and disharmonies, this is very helpful in that it gives you the means by which to work with more dedication in your attempt at communication. You see, there's one thing that I didn't mention before, and is the perfection of communication through concepts. You see, our words carry a very, very small part, a fragment of a concept. When we use words, we cannot communicate a concept, and this is why ideograms or pictograms are much more descriptive than words. This is why in our transit signals, meaning driving directions and the ideograms and the graphics that they use, they don't need words. It's only an image and a symbol that already elicits a response in our brain to understand that there are deers crossing the road here. There are, say, Amish people. I live in Pennsylvania, so I see a lot of these signs. So you already have an idea. Instead of reading, taking more time, words forces us to take more time to understand what we're reading. So our sophisticated language may be helpful to for descriptions, for us to create longer descriptions, and I believe not to keep adding insult to injury on language. Actually, to complement it, I believe that our written language, as it is much more poetic and beautiful, artistic, for those who are able to use it in a way to convey the same concepts. You see, because we want to communicate in concepts. We want to understand in concepts. Our very being desires that. So there is no wonder why in ancient times we use this in Egypt. We use it still in China and Japan, and you see, there's much more beauty in a graphic that conveys a message. Like they say, Quo is talking about concepts. These concepts are what telepathy actually works with. It's communicating a concept and not words. So when we have to use, and this is what I love about what they say, it's because exactly what I'm saying about our sophisticated language being poetic, artistic, then it shows that we can use it in a more skillful manner to communicate the same feeling. I particularly adore using language in my own limited form in both Spanish and English to make visualize people these ideas that I can see within myself. I can understand coherent concepts of reality, and I need to use a language that is it's very poor to do this. And so I find great joy in finding the right words that help people visualize the same ideas that I'm trying to transmit. And this is why the raw material to me is such a beautiful material, because it allows me to read it and use more words to describe and paint an image, a mental image in people's minds, so that people can understand what they're saying, while at the same time not claiming that is the particular way in which it can be interpreted, defined, or described. That is my art. I recognize it. I love it. And well, this is what I'm doing here too. So let's continue on. They have a couple of more things to say, especially in how we have to use this language. I love that last part when they say that as you realize that you are of a necessity relegated to the use of words, then perhaps you will also add to your attempt at communication a certain fervor that seeks to reveal most clearly what you're thinking and feeling. Yes. The more you want to use language to describe that which you are thinking and feeling, then the better you're able to create. Again, it's an artistic expression of your feelings with language, poetry. So they finish up this question by saying, this working with dedication then is likened unto polarizing more efficiently in the positive sense, as you attempt to use your words to become open and transparent to another entity, encouraging the other entity by your own effort to do the same. Thus, communication is hard won, and yet the polarization that is received by such a difficult activity in comparison to concept communication is also enhanced greatly. So in answering Austin's question, Quo says that in the way that we can use communication, it helps to polarize ourselves by breaching the gap between our sense of separation and communication towards the sense of unity, which is essentially what I'm saying. The use of this speech and words, this sophisticated language that we use, especially now in the Western world, allows us to create a sort of telepathy. We can call it fake telepathy, which is exactly what I attempt to do. I'm a fake telepathy guy. But you see, what I'm trying to do is to use sophisticated language or elaborated language to paint an image, a mental image in people, so that we can breach this separation between what I feel and think about reality and how I can convey it in words. And I think the most beautiful way to do this is always to not believe the concepts that we have rooted our words to. You see, we have created, this is why I love etymology as well, and I invite every one of you to go into etymology as much as you desire, to understand the roots of the word, to understand its origins, its beginning, because you will see much more of its true meaning in there, and you can understand better as we communicate with each other. So yeah, this helps breach the gap of unity and separation by us using language in a way that that helps us understand each other from a deeper portion of our beingness, and not so much from the descriptive, semantic way that we treat language. And especially you can see the exacerbation of this in political language and the right language that needs, or words that need to be spoken, and the essence is lost in there. So we can go on with more questions. Somebody called Zach says, "Greetings, Quo. I have a follow-up query. During this time of evolution and moving into fourth density, it appears that telepathy is much more easy to and available to those who are polarizing. Can you give us some recommendation as to how to hone that skill? Quo says, I am Quo and am aware of your query, my brother. Indeed, as you have observed, the ease with which telepathy is available to some people, those who are conscious seekers of truth, is an indication that at this time it is possible for those who are aware of how they are advancing their own evolutionary progress may begin to notice the thinning, shall we say, of the veil of forgetting for them and for others like them who seek with the same purity and intensity. Thus, the quality that is most helpful in being able to transmit and receive thoughts from another being is that this activity be accomplished with another entity that shares your sincerity in depth of devotion to seeking the spiritual evolution of mind, body, and spirit. Thus, in such a tandem effort, there is the possibility of using the meditative state to transmit thoughts to the other entity who is aware that such thoughts are being attempted as communication. The other entity does not have to be in close proximity to you, but needs to be aware that you are attempting to send this entity your images and concepts so that there may be a receptivity on the part of the other entity that is developed by this knowledge. I'll make a pause here and say that I am particularly unaware of these methods. I've heard, as everybody has heard, that there are certain research that has been done on this, and people actually claim that this is something that they do naturally. I think the most blatant proof that we have for this is synchronicity. And all of us in this path have experienced one way or another in which synchronicities seem to manifest as somebody saying, I was just thinking of you and you just text me, or I've been thinking about you for the whole week and suddenly we get in touch, or I've been thinking about exactly what you're saying now. And this is the type of communication that I believe is possible between two sensitive beings. I don't know much about this experiment or this type of practice of sitting, like Quo says, that you can do this with somebody else. I haven't done that. I'm not quite interested in this type of communication, to be honest, but it is possible, of course. I think, like I said, the most blatant proof that we have is synchronicities, and anybody who seeks it is of course, invited to continue to do it, because that means that there is a sensitivity to that in their being. So they keep on going and say, the meditative state aids in such production and reception of telepathic concepts as it is able to take you deeper and deeper into your conscious mind, and even into your subconscious mind, where such communication is more, shall we say, common and possible in regards or in the relation to the higher levels of the conscious mind, which is the busy mind, the monkey mind, as it is called. If you can quiet this mind, the conscious mind or busy mind within the meditative state, then you may begin to experience greater and greater feelings of expansiveness, so that your being begins to move outward in what you would call the time-space or spiritual realms, and begins to encompass the other entity or entities with whom you wish to communicate. If you can visualize this expansion of your being able to encompass the other entity and then transmit your thoughts in this state of being, there is a greater likelihood of the reception by the one to whom they are sent. So here is a practice for this type of communication, of telepathy. So this would be interesting to see more and more in the community of spiritual seekers, to see how it works for some people. I tend to believe that there is a higher sensitivity in people, or rather a proclivity to desire to do this in some people more than others. Perhaps this is the key ingredient in people to start doing this sort of practice and get some results out of that. I don't know how productive this can be, but it is definitely something interesting to try. Like I said, I admittedly am not very interested in this type of practice, so I cannot add too much here. But we can cover one more question here. Somebody named Kathy says, I have a follow-up query to these questions, quote. It has to do with communication with other living souls, their spirit, or their spirit, the spirit of the departed ones, or also with higher self. And I would like specifically to ask about the role of asking assistance from higher self in communicating with those other living or departed friends, or just with higher self directly, for guidance for that communication of sending questions and receiving answers that would be helpful. Quo says, I am Quo and am aware of your query, my sister. The asking for assistance from those greater portions of the self that you may liken unto the higher self, or the mind-body-spirit complex totality, is the same as the student asking the teacher for help with a certain problem, be it math, grammar, spelling, or so forth. This asking for assistance, then, is felt by the soul level of the one who asks, so that at this level of being, the assistance that is provided by the higher self is able to perceive more clearly than the conscious mind is capable of perceiving. Before continuing to the next paragraph, I want to emphasize that it's a solid point that Quo makes here, that you are asking assistance when you ask your higher self. You're asking, in essence, a deeper portion of who you already are. So in a way, it's like diverting your attention from the conscious monkey mind into the deeper portions of yourself. So they continue saying, thusly, once again, if you are able within your conscious mind to use a meditative procedure in which you view yourself as moving into those levels of the unconscious mind to ask for assistance from the higher self, then there is the greater likelihood that this assistance will be clearly perceived in your subconscious mind. If, however, the conscious mind is that level at which one finds oneself in this attempt to communicate with the higher self, being unable to delve deeper into the subconscious mind, then we also recommend the meditative state so that the lowest level of the conscious mind might be presented to the higher self for the reception of the words and thoughts that may be of assistance in communicating with whatever entity you wish to communicate. So, in essence, they give a couple of suggestions in which, if you are able to delve into the unconscious for asking assistance through a meditative procedure, then this would be the greater possibility for you to communicate and ask assistance from your higher self. If not, then if the conscious mind is what you are, the level at which you are asking, then it's recommended that you go into a meditative state so that you can allow the higher self, or the higher portion of yourself, the deepest portion of yourself, perceive the lowest portions of your conscious mind. They use three words here that are kind of hard to make sense of as we read the paragraph, which is the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the unconscious mind. So all of these require their own explanation, and I won't go into the details, but conscious mind, they simply refer to, that's our day-to-day activity. Subconscious is that one which contains, in essence, everything that we perceive, but it's working in automatic, if you will. And the unconscious mind is that which hasn't been manifested, but desires to be manifested, that deepest portion of ourselves. So the higher self, in essence, wants to establish a better communication between these levels. And it depends, of course, on the will and the direction of the desire of communication from the entity. But I think I would summarize this with simply just use a meditative state in any case. And if you're able to move into that unconscious part of yourself, which is quite a remarkable meditative state, or as they say, procedure, then that, of course, is a much more direct way to communicating what you desire. Simply laying down, surrendering everything that you are, is the way I interpret this anyways. So the last paragraph, they say, the entities that you are seeking to establish communication with are upon a level of being that is spiritual in nature, so that they are aware of your attempt to communicate much more likely than they would be if you were not utilizing the meditative state. That makes sense. The meditative state is one which permeates the entire creation much more readily than the conscious sending of thoughts through words and concepts. The unconscious mind, combined with the meditative state, is the most effective combination of those qualities of the self that may then set up a communication that is enhanced by the higher self and makes available this communication to the one with whom the communication is asked for. So again, you can see here how the meditative state really is it's what we all share, the whole creation, negatives and positives, fifth, sixth, and second density entities. All of us share this quiet nature, this unactivity, if I can use that word, of ourselves. This is the meditative state. And within this meditative state is that we can access deeper levels of our conscious mind, reaching the unconscious. As Quo says, the unconscious mind combined with the meditative state is the most effective combination of those qualities of the self that may then set up a communication that is enhanced by the higher self. So, again, this is just another invitation to meditate. There's a part where they say that it's much more, and I would say that's an understatement, it's much more readily than the conscious sending thoughts through words and concepts. That sounds to me as prayers. When people usually pray and they send words and thoughts to the divine asking for assistance. I'm not saying the prayer, of course, doesn't have its usefulness, but compare with the meditative state in which you surrender everything that you are, and you simply you surrender the ego. Let's put it that way. Not everything that you are, so that which you are can shine brighter, and all you need to do is accept what is. So, I said I was going to read that last question, but there's a follow-up. It's actually 2 follow-up questions, so maybe we'll read it quickly. Kathy says, a follow-up to that. Yes, the meditative state is what I was referring to, even though I didn't state it. That it seems to me possible to contact higher self and others while in that deeper state, and that it is not so much an exercise of sending, but one of reaching out and then also receiving, with the help of higher self. So, my follow-up question would be, I have found when doing this with a sincere desire for positive or helpful communication, that I have always found that in the oneness of consciousness, other spirits or souls have always been open to communicating, and I wondered if you would comment upon that. It seems to me a reflection of the eternal oneness of all, and that where all doors are open, and I just find it extraordinary and very reassuring, but I would wish to hear your comment upon that. So Quo says, I am Quo and am aware of your query, my sister. The entities with whom you wish to communicate upon the spiritual level of being have no veil of forgetting to block their view of or reception of communication from you. They are aware that the purpose of this third density illusion is to be of service to others. However, it may be perceived by the conscious seeker of truth. However it may be perceived by the conscious seeker of truth. Thus, you offer to such entities in your attempt to communicate with them a chance to move in clarity through their communications, enhancing their service, so that at their level of being, they are also increasing their polarity as they are attempting to communicate through you to another loved one or friend, shall we say. You are offering such entities a clear and purified means of being of service, a crystal opportunity in which they are full of joy to be able to participate, for in most instances, they are unable to make themselves clearly understood to any such entities without an intermediary, such as yourself, who may call upon another intermediary, such as the higher self, and establish a communication that allows them this signal opportunity to be of service, not only to another entity, but to a loved one. This is a source of great joy for such entities, and this joyful feeling is that which imbues the entire process, so that one who has requested the communication and your assistance is able to open its heart in a manner in which the reception of such words will be enhanced to go beyond the words into the feelings and the images that accompany such heartfelt communication. This one is beautiful. This is a great answer from Quo, talking about how when you lend yourself to the service of other entities to communicate with their loved ones here, i.e. channeling and channeling entities of a loved one, then they're able to actually be of service. So not only are you being of service, but the other entities of being of service as well, those entities who are not in incarnation. And so I don't think I can add much to this, but just rewind if you want and re-listen to that part, because I think it's great. It's a great way to see how when people channel other entities for their loved ones, there is a dual service in progress. And just to finish up, because Kathy has a last question, she says, "Thank you, Quo. Only one further question relating to this entire discussion. Will many of us be moving toward more communication such as this on the higher level as we move more and more towards fourth density, and in such way the veil of forgetting is being thinned in this way? With more openness and connection, there is more knowing. Is that a correct assumption?" Quo says, "I am Quo and am aware of your query, my sister. In general, we would agree that you have correctly summarized the situation. The veil of forgetting, in general, as we have mentioned, is beginning to become less and less thick, less and less able to restrict the vision of those who consciously seek to penetrate this veil, for one reason or another. Many spiritual seekers have, within their hearts and souls, the greatest of desires to move into unity with all entities about them, and with the one infinite Creator within all that there is. This great desire, then, is that which can utilize the thinning of this veil to further thin it for this particular type of entity. It is the spiritual determination and perseverance that are the qualities that move the seeker of truth beyond the veil to see, for the first time, the vision of unity that awaits all on the other side of the veil of forgetting." So, a couple of things here is that the veil of forgetting is losing its thickness as we move into fourth density. However, it takes a conscious effort for us to want to penetrate this veil. And we can see that the veil is thinning as a collective conscious perception of humanity. You can see that there is a clear direction in which humans are moving to a safer environment, more loving and unified perception of all human race and ethnicity and so on. All of this is part of the movement in which the planet is going. And so you can see that the veil is thinning. However, it takes conscious effort to want to see through the veil. Because if you are, say, stupefied by the third density news, I call them third density news, all the third density rubbish that is still thrown at us, then the veil of forgetting will remain at its own strength. So you need to have a conscious effort into moving away from all of this third density obsolete stuff to get into the higher realms of understanding, communication, and so on. And starting from the point in which we started this episode, communicating with words and everything else is a little bit obsolete. I think the most beautiful part is just the poetic nature that is our desire, really. This is why we love music. This is why we love art, because it's not a study. It's not something that you have to go into and really understand. You can't be offended by music. You can't be offended by art. I suppose some people can, but that's themselves. There is a greater mystery in the use of all elements of reality in an artistic way. So this invites us, of course, to have a more open view of this world, a better. You can see that using this sophisticated, elaborate language that we have developed over centuries hasn't yielded any good results in terms of creating unity among all of us. So what's the last resort? Going back to the hearts, going back to emotions, going back to relating to each other in the place where we are at that moment, and not through words and to distinguish people because of their material possessions and so on. In the end, we all look pretty much the same, naked and alone. So let's relate to that emotion, that naked emotion of ourselves that is it's present there. And I believe that this also enhances tremendously our way to communicate with higher self, to higher portions of the mind. One key thing that I like to emphasize in all of this is that everything is within us. Everything is within what we perceive ourselves. And so if we continue to go into the meditative state and explore everything that we see that we are, we have a better way of understanding ourselves and understanding the Creator within us. So with that, I come to the end of this episode. I hope this was at least entertaining, and my hope is that it was valuable to you. I have nothing else to share. I will continue with this channeling in another episode. But for now, I thank you for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.